The deer flies were swarming for 2 weeks last year. I want to get the screen done before they come back. So in screen porch 1, we built a foundation. I put up some columns and I put up some beams. In screen porch 2, I decked it with some treated 2x6s and I put up some rafters and we put up the tin. So now we have a rain resistant structure. And you know what, I'm not even sure if I have that right. But it's close. Anyway, if you missed it, you missed the epic. So go back and watch 1 and 2. We now have a roof, and now we're going to start closing in to actually apply screen, window screen, bug screen, or whatever you want to call it. Finally got out here and replaced my steps going into my wood storage loft after my neighbor stepped through this deck up here when he was helping me move some of Debbie's moles. That was pretty embarrassing, but now it's all new. And that's going to come in handy because I'm going to come in and out of here a bunch of times because I am going to build the screen porch framing out of the old cypress that I have squirreled away. And most of this is not super desirable. Most of it has nails in it, but if I don't use it, my sons will probably put it in the burn pile next door. So old cypress, old cypress, old cypress. There's some over there. There's a couple over there. And here. That's the old cypress. And most of the stuff on this side. Would it be easier to go to Home Depot and buy treated pine? Hell yes. But treated pine is so wet, it doesn't hold paint well for a long time. And I'd have to pay for it, which is a stumbling block. And I like using old stuff, so I'm gonna start dragging this stuff down the stairs and prepping it. I know most of the dimensions I need, so I can get it kind of ready before we get out there. This might be easier than I thought. I pulled out, these are basically 2x4s. I just need to clean them up, cut them to length, and probably patch some holes. Let's go see what we got. And this is to be the longest one, so all the rest of them are fairly short. All the rest of the material I need are much shorter than this, so this might not be too bad. This is a 2x6, and I've got several like this, and they got nails in both sides. Like, they're so rotten that you can't pull them. I was kind of thinking maybe if I cut both sides off, I'd have enough for a stud, but those nails are longer than that, so if it was just 1 or 2, I'd just cut through them, but man, there's dozens on each side. So I'll put this board back, and it'll be good for a tree house or something, but not for this. This is another one I cut a while back, and you can see nail. And I brought it down. I thought maybe if I just cut a stud out of it, I would miss these nails on this side, but no, they're longer than that. So this one's going back upstairs too. My kid's inheritance, or maybe a treehouse. All right, 2 more going up back upstairs. Too many nails, not enough good wood. However, one day I may be able to shed, and I can use these for framing of some sorts where it's not important. Okay, I didn't realize how many decent boards I had. These are decent ones. Somebody has pulled nails. I don't know who. Apparently, the people I bought this used wood from. But every now and then there was a nail with a broken head, and they were still embedded. And the only way to get them out is these. Is to hammer this thing until it pinches the nail and drive it out. And it does some damage, but I had to do it. So I've got one of those little electronic nail finders, but it tends to go off everywhere there's a piece of rust. And everywhere there was a nail hole is a piece of rust. So it doesn't do me much good. But looking good here. I'm going to run these through the planer and bring them, they don't have to be the same thickness. They just have to be paintably smooth on both sides. And if they vary a little bit from one to the other, it makes no difference. So let's crank up the planer. The 8 verticals are planed on both sides. They're all 2 inches or maybe a little more. I don't know, this might be a little less. But now we need to rip them to width. And I think I'm going to just go with 2.5 inches. I'm sorry, 3.5 inches on all of them. And they're all about 4 inches. So I'm going to rip one edge first. And the saw will probably be set at different settings. And then set it to 3.5 and rip the rest of them. I have 18 shorter ones to cut, but I think I'm gonna hold off until I get these full length ones doctored up. Some of them need some little corner pieces set in. Some of them have some splits that need to be glued. The nail holes don't bother me. The paint and some caulk will cover those, but like this is a pretty deep hole, so it might need some putty. And this is a bad corner, so I'm gonna stop my forward progress and go ahead and get these into good enough shape for installation. Five of the pieces 3 feet long. That's for the bottom. It goes on the floor and at like 30 inches up. And I need 14, so I got enough material here. Some of it's kind of Yankee, but we're gonna rip it and plane it and cut it and take a look at it. Just might have to do some patching at the end, and I don't mind doing that. I feel good using up all this stuff that's been up there for over 20 years because I bought this material when I built my house, so I could use a lot of old lumber in the house. Not framing, but for trim and stuff. And while I was up there, I found an eye bolt. And I have no idea where this came from. It's a man. Might use it one day. So I miscounted. I don't need 14, I need 20. But some of the ones that I just cut need some remedial work to bring them back to life. I run out of space, so I'm gonna let this glue cure. It's pretty cold right now. I might ought to leave it overnight. And I'll cut some more. I got the material. It's just a matter of having room and cutting them and getting them ready and looking at them and patching them up. And it's gonna be great. So this morning I'm gonna get back to work on the screen porch. I got my 8 verticals that I cleaned up out of the old cypress and patched and sanded and painted. I'm gonna install those so I can get my measurements, my crossways measurements. Got a fresh blade on the skill saw. It's cold here. It's 10 degrees colder here than it was when I left my house, and it's only like 75 miles anyway. But first I'm gonna drag the new kitchen, the new outdoor kitchen out, set it up on the porch. So we went to the country yesterday and put up the 8 posts for to support the screen, and I got measurements between them all. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut these. These are gonna go on the floor vertically, and they'll have a little arched drain in the middle of each one with some screen. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut them to length while I'm here with the miter saw and get the arch cut and get the screen put in and get 2 coats of primer, or at least 1 coat of primer on them and 2 coats of primer on the ends. If I cut them there, I probably won't be as careful with the paint. So we're gonna get to sawing. Shouldn't be a problem. And I think I have a couple of extra just in case I misdo a measurement, which I am prone to doing. Okay, all cut to length and it makes sense. So 3 going on the side of the porch are roughly the same length. And then across the front, I couldn't center that post because of the pine tree. So 2 on one side are a little longer than the 2 on the other side. And then the 2 by the doors a little shorty. And then the 3 on the other end of the porch are pretty much the same length. So what I need to do now is find the center of each one, put a mark, and I got to cut something, and I got to decide what to cut. But first thing is to find the center of each one and put me a mark so I don't get messed up. So I was hurting my head trying to figure out what shape to make the cutout for the drains on the board that does the perimeter. So I just did some angles and it just didn't look right. And then I did a circle and that was a little better, but not right. And then I did a Forstner hole with 2 lines and that just didn't look right. So I lowered it and did it again. That didn't look right. I lowered it, no, and I raised it and did it again, and that didn't look right. So this time I raised the hole and I lowered the cut. So it's more like a keyhole looking thing, and I like it. I'm gonna put this cutout in the middle of every one of the bottom pieces of trim. And then what I did this one, it was kind of scary because it was real short. I lowered it straight down on the table saw. Of course I had the fence set right and I had a block so it couldn't go anywhere. And I cut a groove and we'll put the window screen up in that groove. And I have some stainless steel window screen that's real rigid. So once it's up in there and this board is set onto the deck and fastened down, it ain't going anywhere. So now I need to use this as my template and mark every one of my little boards. And there aren't that many of them. There are what? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 of them. This won't take too long. So this is my template for the little cutout. I got it slid to the table, so I'm trying to make this cut more repeatable. So I put a sacrificial board on the miter guide. I think that's what it's called, miter gauge. And if I pull it up right here, and I went ahead and cut through. So if I pull it right here, set the board where I want it cut, marked the center line on the blue tape. I should just be able to put the boards that need to be cut with the center line matching, make a cut, rotate it 180 degrees and make the next cut, and they should be very accurate and repeatable. That's my goal. That's perfect. I'm happy with that. Got to do 11 more, not mess up. So marking the center of the blade, I'm using my combination square, and I grab a tooth. It's just set a little bit lower than the top of the tooth, and I slide it till it lets go. And I'm doing it with one hand, so I can't really do it, but basically I do this a couple of times, and when it lets go, I put a pencil mark on my rip fence, and I go the other direction and do the same thing, and ended up with 2 pencil marks. So halfway between there should be the apex. I'm gonna put a mark here, and that's where I'm gonna line my boards up to center the groove for the screen in the bottom of the toe plates. So my goal here is to cut a recess out of the bottom of the kick boards, the bottom boards, so I can slide a piece of stainless steel screen in there, bug screen, and not have to worry about trying to staple it to this curve or trying to squash it in there. It's going to be a good tight fit. So I'm going to plunge cut it with the center line on the center of the blue and go straight down, and we'll get an arc cut here, which will be a little deeper than the cutout. So I'll just be able to cut some whole bunch of round top screens and stick them in there. The long ones are going to be easy. The little short ones I'll probably have to use some blocks or something to protect my fingers. But just know, when you're messing with a table saw, it always wants to push the boards that way. So if you keep your fingers on the front of the blade, I don't know that anybody's ever been cut. Sometimes you get bruised, but you don't ever want to put your fingers on the back of the blade. If something happens, it's going to go through there faster than you can react. So I'm always pretty careful to keep my fingers from the back side of this blade. It can do bad things. And of course, as soon as I said that, look where I put my fingers. But in my defense, I'm not grabbing the board and I'm not pulling the board. I'm just holding the tip and picking it up. If the board were to kick back, it would just leave my fingers very rapidly and slap me in the face. And if this was treated pine, the saw would be doing a lot more screaming and squalling, because treated pine is real stringy and wet, and it's fairly difficult wood to rip, whereas this cypress is just soft and mellow, and it's just wonderful to work with. Okay, we started out with the yellow handled snips and it was no go. It just got stuck in there. They might have worked if they were brand new, but they're old and kind of worn. And then I went to the electric snips. Same thing, it just kind of got in a bind. So then I went with the other electric snips and it worked pretty well, I think. Yeah, buddy. So last time I came, I stood up the 8 verticals, and that went pretty well. And then I took my measurements and went home and made and painted the bottoms, and I think I've got them all the right length, amazingly. So some of them can be nailed right now, and some of them need a 1x on the inside of this 6x6 to have something to affix the screen to when we pull the screen. It'll have to be the same plane as this 4x4. So, but these 3 can be fastened. Let's see how they do. So we started up the generator and I cut these 6 1x, put them in place. They're an inch back from the column, the same as this. And now that will allow me to fit the bottoms because I cut those an inch short along here. And I can start putting the stool, which unfortunately it's just going to be toenail there. I didn't really think about that. That's not a lot of support. This will have 100% support. I don't know, I might add something there. Anyway, before I put these in place, I painted the top and the bottom of each one. And I picked the bottom up off of the deck, just maybe a 1/16 of an inch. And that will keep them from absorbing so much water, which will make them last a little longer, but it'll make the paint last a little longer. That's the main reason I did it, to keep that wet dry cycle down to a minimum. So let's see, these bottoms should fit now. Before I covered these up, I want to show you what I ended up doing to attach the column to the beam. These are basically lag screws, kind of a modern equivalent. They're skinnier in diameter and they have a sharper thread, but I think they're like 10 inches long. They go way up here. This one goes way up here in this column. If you remember, the columns on the corners had those big spikes, so pretty comfortable with that. Okay, screen porch framing is caulked and it's not painted. It's kind of painted. Everything has at least 1 coat, but it needs another coat. So I don't know, maybe the end of this video. It's getting exciting here. Oh, and I have to hang the door, but that's a whole different deal. So that's a milestone, and I built electrical service, or finished electrical service. I have the 30 amp cord from inside, which it used to be the camper cord, and I just hardwired it in rather than putting a receptacle. And I got my 7-foot heavy wall galvanized pipe, which I got for free, and I've got a secondhand rain cap. I did have to buy this little contraption here and buy that, and it's all hooked up on the inside. So only thing I'm lacking, I need a catch off for the utility company to stretch their wire to hold it, because these conductors don't hold the load. And I need a 30 amp single pole breaker, which Home Depot was out of. Oh, and I built my little temporary flood wall to mitigate some scouring that's been happening underneath the tiny house. until we can have some dry weather and I can do proper drainage. I can't do proper drainage in the winter. No way.